Good afternoon and welcome to The Appeal Live, a co-production of Now This and The Appeal. I'm Emily Galvin-Almanza. Today we're going to be talking about a statewide effort in Connecticut to protect tenants from being steamrolled by an unforgiving evictions process that threatens to displace thousands of the state's residents. Connecticut, like many states, is currently operating under a state and federal evictions moratorium that protects many renters who've fallen far behind on rent during the pandemic. But Connecticut's state moratorium is set to expire imminently, and the federal moratorium only goes through June. So whenever these protections expire, the eviction machine will kick back up into full effect, and many people who've been treading water will suddenly be at risk of losing their housing. It's worth noting that these moratoriums, of course, have not protected everyone from eviction in Connecticut. More than 1,000 people have already been removed from their homes since October, and that's according to data reviewed by The Appeal. Over half of the eviction cases filed in Connecticut during the pandemic last year were Black or Latinx people, even though these groups make up less than a quarter of the state's population. With those numbers set to get much worse during the so-called evictions cliff, lawmakers in Connecticut are currently considering a variety of measures designed to soften the blow for tenants. One of the most important bills would provide a right to counsel in eviction proceedings. Now, if the phrase right to counsel sounds familiar to you, you probably recognize it from criminal court. When you get arrested, you have the right to an attorney. If you can't afford a lawyer, one will be provided to you. We've all heard those words spoken on endless TV programs before. But the right to counsel doesn't extend beyond criminal court. The Constitution only imposes it in a criminal context. That doesn't mean, though, that criminal court is the only context that can change the course of someone's life forever. Evictions, which take place in civil court, can absolutely shatter the life of a person or a family, but there's no right to counsel in evictions. So as a result, the vast majority of tenants who are facing eviction go up there alone against landlords who most of the time have their own lawyers. This arrangement is, of course, completely stacked in favor of the represented party. In other words, the landlords who have the lawyers get better outcomes. Tenants who are forced to go it alone are more likely to lose their homes, more likely to be forced out in evictions carried out by sheriffs. And beyond that, they're also more likely to be unable to negotiate move-out dates or unable to keep evictions off their records, so it's harder to find housing in the future, unable to find rental or relocation assistance, unable to apply for public housing. All of these things that damage the ability of renters to find housing in the future and stay stable. Now, Connecticut is one of at least 7 states considering the right to counsel legislation for low-income tenants facing eviction. Some supporters say that is perhaps the least officials could do. While it wouldn't necessarily halt the oncoming wave of evictions, it would at least provide tenants with some level of protection when it hits. Joining me now to discuss the right to counsel in housing court in Connecticut is State Senator Saud Anwar. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me.
So I'd love for you to sort of start by filling us in on the scope of the problem. What does the eviction landscape look like right now in Connecticut? And, as I mentioned at the top, I know some people are already getting evicted in spite of the moratorium. Who's getting evicted right now, and how's it going to get worse when the moratorium expires?
Well, after the pandemic, it was very clear. For even prior to the pandemic, every month there are people who are going through these eviction processes. Now, I've served as a chair of housing in the past, and currently I'm the vice chair of housing. But during the time of the pandemic is when I took on the responsibility of chairing the housing committee, and it was so clear that we had a tsunami of evictions that we were just going to be seeing. Thankfully, we had a federal moratorium, and thankfully we had a state moratorium as well, which is just not fixed the problem. It has actually delayed the problem. So all the issues that we have been worried about hundreds and thousands of people who are going to lose their homes, we have put a pause button to it, but they are all accumulating. And once that pause button is taken off, all of those are going to suddenly come in, and we'll see thousands of people at a risk of losing their homes. And that is something that really scares and concerns me at this time. And April 19th, we are, as just like you had alluded to, there's a chance that if we do not extend the moratorium, there will be a significant challenge for a lot of our citizens in our state.
So let's talk about that and how stacked the system is right now. So I'd love for you to sort of walk us through, if you're a tenant, if you cannot afford a lawyer, you're at risk of losing your home, and you have to go to court to fight for your home. What is it like right now? What does that battle look like for a tenant with no counsel?
So I'll share you a true story without the name of that individual. And then this was a woman who was in her 60s, is diabetic, hypertensive, lost her job, and she actually was unable to pay for her home that she rented. And now in this situation, she was given a notice that she had to leave. And right now she fell outside of the definition of the eviction moratorium, and therefore she was not protected. Now, in this case, is this individual, she cannot afford anything. She had a car which was barely functioning, and this individual has to go and fight her case. And in that particular situation, she's making phone calls, figuring out a place for any individual to be able to take care of her. Meanwhile, her blood sugar is out of control. She's got an infection, not COVID, but had a respiratory infection. She's got high blood pressure. She is going through her personal challenges with no family, no friends to be able to take her, and a car that's not reliable, and a home that she's going to lose. And in this situation, she's trying to find a way to be able to get somebody to help her out. I got involved in that situation because in my responsibility, I actually heard about her. So I said, I'm going to try to see what we can do. And then we started to make phone calls to find an attorney. And there are a lot of volunteer organizations that are trying to help individuals, but they were overwhelmed and there was literally no attorney available. Now, think about this, that I'm the chair of housing in the state of Connecticut. And I cannot help find an attorney who is going to be able to work to help take care of this individual who is not going to survive if she is homeless. This is like in the winter months when we were going through this challenge. And to the point that I said, okay, I'm going to go to the court to represent you, but I'm a doctor and I cannot even go. And as I talked to the attorneys, they told me that I'm not authorized and it's illegal for anybody to go and represent this individual unless they're an attorney. And it's like a checkmate situation. So I cannot go and support her. She cannot go and speak on her behalf because she is in her own challenging situation. And not only that, there is no attorney that's available and she has no resources. If she had resources, she would pay for that attorney to get one more, pay the rent and get one more month to be able to do this. And that's the challenges that they're facing. This is actually a true story from a few months ago. And that's the part that, and what we had to do at that time, I had to go and start to make phone calls to all organizations and literally beg. And then one of the person was very kind and she came forward and she said, look, I'm going to try and take this case and help this person out. And as soon as this case was taken, she had a legitimate issue and she was able to get few more months of safety, and she is in a better place than what she was at before. So this is where this becomes a real issue, where having an attorney to be able to plead your case, you are going to have safety and your own place to be there. And in the absence of that, you're homeless. And then the state is catching up on the entire cost of homelessness, whether it's the health, the well-being of that individual, all of those things just completely drain the individual emotionally, physically, financially, and state is part of that emotional financial drain as well. And this is all preventable. If we invest the money early enough, if we had the resources early enough, we would be able to take care of these individuals. And data shows that overwhelming majority of these cases could be supported in one.
So I want to sort of drill into this because you just described like this incredibly compelling story. And I don't think that there are people out there who would want that woman to be out on her own in the cold, in winter, in Connecticut. Like, this is heartbreaking. And as you pointed out, she had a legitimate legal issue that once a lawyer was involved, the lawyer saw the issue and they were able to act on it. And I think you've really just gone to the heart here of what the chaos that is created when you don't have lawyers. Now, full disclosure, a little bit of bias. I'm a lawyer, not a housing lawyer. I was a public defender for a long time, but it does mean that, you know, I recognize how frightened people are when they're asked to go to court of any kind. Court is frightening. We use special language. It's not really understandable if you're not a lawyer. It's exclusionary. And the fallout you're talking about, when people don't have counsel, don't know what's going on, they're frightened, they don't know how to fight back, and they end up out on their own. As you pointed out, it's very, very expensive. And it's also really chaotic for judges to manage their courtrooms and for the system to work out. It's expensive and it's chaotic. Now, I know academic studies of right to counsel programs have shown that they actually pay for themselves, that cities spend less paying for lawyers than they would spend on homelessness services and all this sort of fallout cleanup. Now, in your experience with a story like you just told me, and knowing that this program could pay for itself, like, what does opposition to this look like? Like, what does a skeptic say in response to this information?
So this is the painful part of our society. The way people look at it is that, look, if it does not impact me, it doesn't matter. And that's the mindset for individuals. And anyone who is suffering, there's so many mistakes and wrongful ideas that people have about the society. First, they believe that people make a choice to be homeless, which is ridiculous. Nobody makes that choice. And then not only that, they say, well, those individuals should have made a decision which would allow them to get the lawyer themselves. They should pay for it themselves. It's all sorts of things. And then they say it's providing free service. Why are we doing this? And then there's another mindset that, well, we need to provide the same thing for the landlords. So when we had the public hearing for this bill, it would have been worthy for everybody to see about the questions that were being answered by my fellow legislators, the people that I respect in many respects for the volunteer work that they do and some of the things that they do, but they really don't understand the reality of what a person is experiencing. And also, I say to them at times, I said, you know what, if you are not concerned about the moral argument, there is a financial argument. And I give them the example. I said, look, think about it, that you are without a home in the middle of the winter and you are going through a place that you're homeless. What are you going to do? What are you going to do at that time? And you have no place to go to. Well, what people do is they either try to go to the hospital by saying they have chest pain or they have a problem, or they would go to prison because they will at least be warm and they'll be able to survive. And that's what people are doing, and people are making those decisions. And frankly, I tell them, if you are in that position, I can promise you're going to make that kind of a decision as well. And then why are we using our healthcare infrastructure or prison system for solutions that are actually preventable? And it's an uphill battle for some individuals, and it is unfortunate that we have to even explain this thing, which is so basic and simple. The investment of prevention saves so much money that not only pays for itself, it saves money, so it pays far more than its worthiness.
You're telling them that an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, it seems. And this message may be taking hold. To your point, there's new polling from Data for Progress and the Lab, which is a project of the appeal, that finds that 67% of Connecticut voters support providing tenants with lawyers. Now, do you think that vocal opponents of this legislation are aware of the level of popularity that this proposal has? Do they just not care?
I think we have a tendency to live in our bubbles at times. And my fear is that many of these individuals live in the bubble and they feel comfortable being in the environment where they actually say us versus them. And then they don't try to connect the fact that if you start to interact with the people who are homeless, which I have had the opportunity to interact with a lot of homeless people, they are no different than any one of us. It's a life experience or a challenge. Everybody's life goes through ups and downs, and they're going through a difficult period, and they're no different than us. They're educated. They have been owners of homes. They have had a difficult situation in their life or their emotions or substance use or anything else that may have resulted in this. And in this particular case with the pandemic, they were just at a bad place at the bad time with having an infection or the company shutting down. So those are some of those aspects that we need to recognize. So that empathy is not happening because sometimes people live in areas and communities where this issue is not talked about. And since it's not recognized, talked about, or people have not humanized the individual challenge, then it's easy to walk away from it and say we are saving money by not spending the money to prevent spending more money.
Well, to your point about humanizing it, I know the results in other cities have been pretty striking, and that's results primarily for families and primarily for people of color, and these are deeply human, high impact results. I'm reflecting primarily on Cleveland, where 93% of evictions of individuals and families were prevented during the first 6 months of a right to counsel program. And New York and San Francisco, among other cities, have seen similarly encouraging results. So I'm wondering, as you do try to build a better system here, what are the metrics that you're looking to and the hopes you have for what could be done in Connecticut?
Well, first of all, we are hoping we can pass this bill and it becomes a law. And then could require the state to actually be part of investment into some of the areas, so we would have enough resources to be able to provide individuals going through those aspects of difficulty. And we want to do it in a very timely fashion, because I'm hoping that this eviction moratorium is going to be extended. Once it's extended, we will have a breathing space, and then we would have this program in place, which is going to allow the individuals going through these struggles and challenges to have somebody represent them. There will be not enough resources because of the number of homes that are under risk, the individuals that are at risk of going through those challenges. I think the statistic that you mentioned about how much that has helped, the landlords, who actually at times are the opponents, need to also recognize that it's not harming them. They're also being protected. Now, there are resources that are available from the CARES Act and the CARES Act 2 as well, which are going to protect the landlords too. And that's where there's a disconnect that unfortunately in the messaging has been lost. So what I'm hoping that it's going to do is that individuals would be able to get the support that they need. We would be able to reduce the risk to individuals, and only the ones who do not have any legitimate reason for what's going on with their eviction process, only those would be the individuals who would get evicted, and we need to have a safety net for them at a different level.
So this sounds really exciting. And you mentioned that the legislation still has to become a law. And I'm wondering, as we close the show, speaking to voters in Connecticut, speaking to people who might support this idea, who tune in to the Appeal Live, I'm wondering if you could just take a second to talk about where things stand, what the timeline is, what people should be watching for in terms of seeing if this makes it into being a law, and if someone is interested in following this issue or wants to speak out about it, what the best way for them to do so would be.
Absolutely. So first of all, I'm glad that people are listening to this message, and it's so critical. We have a responsibility to take care of individuals who are going through challenges. Every person, each and every one of us, will go through challenges in a lifetime. And during the time when we are going through these struggles, whether they're emotional, physical, or financial, we will be at a risk of not being in comfort that we have enjoyed. And it is our responsibility to hold on to the individuals who are going through those struggles. What this bill is doing is it's saying that, look, we are going to make sure that your home is protected. Your ability to stay in a safe place is going to be protected as you go through those struggles, because we will be able to help you overcome those when you have a safe space. It is proven that it can do this. And any time people lose their home, their health, their emotional health, their well-being, all of those things are impacted so deeply that they cannot get back well and into the health care and their behavioral health and other aspects. So we can prevent this. This bill is not going to cost us that much as taxpayers. It is going to help protect the taxpayers far more. If you recognize the numbers that are there, a small amount of investment is going to prevent this homelessness, and we will be able to keep the people in their safe spaces and be able to overcome those challenges. And they will become taxpayers. We will make more money as the individuals who are caring about the money on the tax end. They will become part of our workforce. We just need to help them get to that point, and we can only do that through this vote that we need to have in the Senate and the House. What I am hoping that you can do is to reach out to your legislators. Each and every one of the people in the state of Connecticut, you are represented by a state rep and a senator. Please call them and then ask them that you believe in right counsel for housing and eviction, for supportive housing and eviction prevention. And the bill number is 6531. HB 6531. Ask them to support it, and then make sure that you follow up with them as well. And that is how we can make this into a law. And hopefully we can move to protect our neighbors and our community members.
Senator Anwar, thank you so much for that information and for that passionate defense of keeping each other safe and protected during this unprecedented crisis. I really appreciate you coming on the show.
So much. Thank you again for having me.
So what do we want from our government if not to keep us safe in crisis, if not to lift people up when they are struggling the most in ways that benefit not just those who are struggling, but those around them, their community, their neighbors, their colleagues, the businesses they frequent, the neighborhoods to which they are adjacent? I mean, what do we want from our government if not to build communities in which everyone is not just free to survive, but able to thrive, able to attain economic mobility? Think about what your home is, right? Your home is a place you've been told to stay safe during the pandemic. Your home is a place you don't have to put a mask on. Your home is a place where you can be warm. Your home is where you keep your food so that you're not living granola bar to granola bar. You have a place where you can go and feel safe. Your home is where you can get ready for a job interview. Your home is where your kids are playing on your floor. What is more essential than that? It's exciting to hear Senator Anwar talk about the way in which a simple right to counsel can prevent incredible destabilization and negative outcomes for people who are likely to be rendered unhoused if they are not given the chance to have a lawyer look at their case in housing court. You heard his call to action, so I hope if you're listening to this show in Connecticut that you listen closely to the information that Senator Anwar gave. You can, of course, replay the show anytime you want on the Appeal Live on Twitter or on Facebook. But we're very glad to have you joining us and to be covering all of these essential issues, changes, and yes, transformations happening around the country right here on the Appeal Live. I'm Emily Galvin Almanza. Thank you so much for joining us.